Sure.
Looking at this one.
Yeah, we'll get us
There we
on
go.
everything. So, a couple of things to talk. First of all, it is Tuesday, November 12th, right? And we are here live at Lynn's Ice Cream, Yogurt, and More in Longview on Commerce Avenue. And so, if you ever are looking for some place to stop by here, it's a great real food, which Lynn always provides and is always terrific. So, program and of course, we just this last week, a week ago tonight, we had our elections here, and that was quite interesting. Actually, we saw some very interesting changes take place in council races and that sort of thing. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out and what kind of changes we might expect. Political side of things, and we'll just reasons, and that'll be our hope, and that's what we'll encourage them to do. So the school bond, of course, went down by a couple of percentage points, did not reach the supermajority. It'll be interesting to see what the school board does now as they begin looking forward to whatever changes that they have to make. There certainly are some significant facility issues and that have to be addressed, and that's what this bond was about, and was about improvements, and hope that we as a community can come together and support our students and get the things done that need to get done. With holidays coming up, it's always pretty exciting. We've got Thanksgiving coming up. We have Christmas coming up. We've got New Year's coming up, and that can be a really fun and exciting time. But it's not fun and exciting for everyone during the holidays. Holiday depression. We see increases in suicides and in mental health crisis. Suicide is one of the top 20 causes of death in our country, and so I'm inviting you, special Mark My Words, that will be aired on KEDO 1491 FM beginning on Monday, November 18th from 5 to 6 p.m. I'll have some special guests there. And the first week, this next upcoming Monday, the program is entitled The Issue. And we'll talk about suicide as an issue, as a public health issue, as a family issue, as a friend issue. Yeah, that's Monday, this coming Monday, November 18th at 5 p.m. on KEDO Radio. Join me for this very important community conversation. And anyway, so speaking of important programs, one of the most positive and I think healthy is Head Start. And I have to say I do. So I'm a little biased. The public, I wanted the community to know it offers. So joining me here tonight is education advocate with a Bachelor of Organizational Leadership from Warner Pacific, and I understand started with Head Start in 2007. Is that right?
That is right. 2007. Just coming up on 13 years serving in the organization, and but just recently celebrated 1 year in the director role. So it's been an exciting past year learning. And one of the great things about Head Start is development on all levels. And we could probably talk about that particular term for quite some time. But the organization is part of Lower Columbia College. And I've been able to develop as a person being part of the organization and grow and learn new things, and happy to be in this new role.
Great. Well, we're excited to have you, and I didn't get to say welcome. Thank you for being here.
Glad to be here.
So tell me, first of all, if you would, where you came from. I don't know. Is Longview home for you? Did you start off here in?
Well, no. The answer is no. So I have a childhood story. I'm in the business of early childhood education. And so I have found throughout my life that what happens when we're young matters, and it shapes our actions, our decisions as we grow. And so one of my experiences was moving around a lot as a child. And I actually went to 7 elementary schools, 3 middle schools, and 1 high school. And I'm a proud graduate of Kelso High School, and spent those last few years of my education here in Cowlitz County, Toutle, Castle Rock, and then Kelso. And then was really eager after living in lots of small towns to get to the city. So I immediately went on to the University of Washington, Seattle, and had that wonderful experience, and really loved it and wanted to stay there. But I had some family needs that brought me home. My mom passed away my senior year of college, and my husband and I had just married, and I had 2 young sisters still at home. One still in elementary school, finishing her last year, and the other in middle school. And we made that decision as a couple, as a sister, to come back to Kelso and Longview and Cowlitz County and support them and start our lives as a family here. And so we did that. That was wrought with challenges and learning. But what happened out of it is it was 2001 at the time, and I was struggling right out of college to find employment in our community. And so I ended up doing a year of AmeriCorps service, and was placed and chose my host site of Youth and Family Link, and spent a year there and loved it. Started getting connected to the community, learning about it. As an adult and someone who had something to offer, that transition from childhood to adulthood. And I spent 7 years there, wonderful years learning and growing so much before I moved on to Head Start. So during my time at Youth and Family Link, I worked with young children and families. At the time, there was an initiative in the state called Readiness to Learn that was supported by our legislature. And at that time, really began to see the value in early learning, and have continued my journey in that since then.
So when you were in college, and this was not necessarily your chosen career path then.
Right. Yeah, I went up with all kinds of plans, as our young people do. I think I started wanting to be a physical therapist because I was an athlete and loved that, and then got an interest in psychology and in human nature and education. And my original plan was I wanted to do research, get involved in research, whether that be in education or psychology research. And that was an opportunity there in Seattle. But it's certainly been a value to get the experience in the field here and be able to crosswalk what I learned in college, and then more recently here at Warner Pacific. Now, I don't know if a lot of our community is really aware of the University Center at Lower Columbia College. But one of the things that happened for me is moving back to this area, I had to commute to think about getting a master's degree.
Right, yep.
And a lot of people are online learners, and that's a wonderful thing. But for me, I need that classroom experience, that conversation and interaction with my peers and instructor to really have a quality learning experience. And so the University Center at LCC partnered with Warner Pacific College, and I got to be a part of the very first on-site master's cohort here in Cowlitz County.
Wow.
A few years ago. And it was an amazing experience, and one that I will always value, and it has really brought me to where I am today because I got to practice those skills while I'm doing the work and serving the community.
And I know that area of Lower Columbia College has grown quite a bit. So it certainly is continuing to meet the needs of our community in a much greater way. So let's talk a little bit about about Head Start, and I'm not sure maybe that people watching, whether they're watching live now or whether they'll look at the video later on, what is Head Start exactly?
Yeah, I think Head Start it's well known. It's known of, but I don't know that a lot of folks really understand the different components of it. I think maybe the first thing people think about is young children and families. They might think preschool in 1955. Um, yep, yep. And so they're coming up on celebrating 55 years nationally, and we've been in Cowlitz County since 1969. And the whole premise around Head Start is to provide education to young children and comprehensive services to their families to fight poverty, provide education and kind of this hug to families, I'll call it a hug, so that they can move out of poverty. So it is a 2-generation approach. Now, when we think about young children, I'm talking 5 and under, they don't do much in life without their parent, right?
Right.
So you have to have that parent involvement in order to make gains with a young child as well. It goes both ways. And so we do provide preschool services. We have several different models, and I can tell you a little bit more about that later. But along with that preschool, it's child development and really assessing where children are at and focusing on growing them through peer interaction and through supporting their parent. And so I use this other term, comprehensive services. We know that children who are healthy, they can learn. And so one of the things that Head Start does is that it works with parents to identify, do you have insurance? And so if those things aren't in place, then we're connecting parents and children to those services, and then have that family routine. If I'm going to have a healthy child, they'll be ready to learn.
So a little bit, and I guess, pardon this, I mean this, no disrespect at all, but really helping the parents who are parenting the child.
Yeah.
So you're really just doing this whole family.
Yes. It's a family approach. We know that the parent is the child's first and most important teacher. There's absolutely no doubt about that. We put the parent in that role and we partner with them. We couldn't have any success with their children without their involvement. And they lead the way. They guide what the services look like. They love their children.
I'm sure that they do. Like we all do. We all love our kids and want to do the best for them. So the funding for this program, then you said it's federally funded. How is it that a program maintains federal funding for 55 years?
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Right.
I think that if you're not the military, that's probably kind of a difficult thing to do.
Yeah, it is, again, very well longstanding. And I would say the authors of this program were very, very thoughtful. And what we call their performance standards, of course, with federal funding, we have lots of rules and regulations, as it should be. And we're monitored. So we have federal audits, interviews, site visits, those sorts of things. But what we have to do is, currently what Head Start is on a 5-year grant cycle. And so we work with all of our stakeholders. So that's, again, first parents, staff, our policy council. And policy council is a governing board of Head Start parents, a representative from every single Head Start classroom, as well as community representatives like Mark here. We work with them along with other community partners to develop a strategic plan We utilize a community assessment, a very extensive community assessment, so that we're data driven when sharing information with our stakeholders and creating that strategic plan. And all of that information about what's happening currently in our community drives how we write our grant. So each year we have to do a continuation grant to update our services to make sure they're still meeting the needs of our community in the best way that we can with our funding. And so an example of one of the things that we've done with our funding is we noticed that last year our enrollment for preschool was a little down. And when we looked at the data, we saw that the birth rate had dipped 5 years ago, interestingly on the heels of the Great Recession. And we had to respond to that. And so we shifted some of our slots with the input of our stakeholders to serve some of our now early start families. We don't have as many children and families that we serve there. So I said quite a few things there that folks maybe don't know about. One is that we have Head Start, which is the preschool, but we also have Early Head Start, which serves children 0 to 3 and including pregnant mothers. And that's funding that's part of our federal grant that came online about 1994 is when that became an opportunity for programs to say, you know what, we have this need in our community, not just for preschool, but for younger children and families. And that's not a childcare setting with our what we call 0 to 3 pregnancy to age 3. That's child development through a home visiting model, and really supporting parents, again, as that first and most important teacher in their child's development through increasing their quality of the parent-child interaction. There was a study released this last week, or at least it came to social media's attention, released by JAMA, that said that preschoolers' brain development is hindered by screen time. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh, I didn't see that, but it comes as no surprise.
Right. Yes, it's like we know this, and now we have all the research coming out to
So let me
tell us.
let me talk about that just a little bit. So or ask about that a little bit more. So screen time, computer, phone, maybe I don't television in general.
Yep.
So anything in front of a screen actually hinders a child's growth and
The study recently was 3 to 5. It was preschool ages 3 to 5 years old.
3 to 5.
If it was more than 2 hours per day.
Okay. All right. Riley, no more computer and stuff, TV, not more than 2 hours a day.
More than 2 hours. That's right. Right. And it's a challenge in our society and our culture. Absolutely.
It is. You know, I recently had on Charlie Gord from CJAC here on the program. And one of the things that was very interesting that he talked about, and I realize it's a little bit off topic with this, but I think is related, is how many more younger offenders, sex offenders, that they are finding, and that the studies are really because of their exposure to what they see online and what videos are out there. So I think it is incredibly important that we limit screen time for young children. You're right. That's very interesting.
And we really encourage, I talked about parent-child interaction. It really is eye contact with your child. So even if you're doing screen time, have it be where we're watching something together and then we look at each other and we talk about it and we have this experience and then we're going back and forth, and that's brain building. That's called serve and return. We're watching something, I'm showing you, we're talking about it, I'm serving, and then you're returning with some interaction, and I'm going to learn and develop pathways in my brain from that. And our young children's brains are they're growing so much and expanding at a rate that, all of the brain science has just it's amazing. So the fact that if we have downtime and a repetitive activity over and over and over again. And one of the things that we see in our classrooms, and it's something nationwide, but it's also happening right here in Cowlitz County, is we're seeing an increase in what we can identify as challenging behaviors, external behaviors, some might call it more physical behaviors of children in our preschool classrooms. And it's really hard and interesting to think about how this might be connected to some cultural norms. We don't know that for sure, but we can make some strong ties as educators in the classroom to what we know children are doing and in their downtime and what that looks like in the classroom. And so that's one of the current challenges that we have, is how to serve children, continue to build their brains, alongside their parents, and keep them safe as well.
Now, this is not necessarily not all of the programs, but pieces of it are an all-day program.
Head Start initially began as a part-day program, 4 days a week. And we still have some of those models in our community as well, but we know that children have better learning outcomes when they have more time in that group setting. But also it's aligned with the school district. So imagine a family, they have a preschooler in Head Start, and then they have a third grader at the elementary school next door. And that family, now that they have both of their children in that safe setting, in that safe environment, they can now, if they're not already in the workforce, they're not already working in their education, now they have this great opportunity to get connected. That we're working on with parents is asking them and being curious about their educational opportunities and what they see for themselves next, and showing them what's available in our community, which is a lot.
Now, you talked about this program. I mean, it's been in place for 55 years nationally, 50 years here.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, a lot of time to build, to develop a lot of data. I mean, you're going to have a lot of data in that period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked about this being a data-driven program. What does the data show on the effectiveness of this? Is it making the impact? I guess is the question.
Yeah, and the answer
Worth the investment.
is yes, it is absolutely worth the investment. There have been longitudinal long-term studies done that show that children who participated in Head Start have better scores at their third grade reading level. They graduate high school, they're less inclined to be involved with legal issues or incarceration later in life. And so those are our early investments, make all the difference in not having some other, negative investments later in life.
It was, and Mindy and I've talked about this before. One of the reasons why I was very interested in Head Start and in early childhood learning, because of the crime prevention piece of it, because the studies have shown that kids who have a better early childhood learning experience are less inclined to end up in jail, quite honestly, or in trouble with the law. So who's eligible? Can just anybody come down and sign up? I want to put my kid in there. This is such a great program. I want to plug them in.
I wish that were the case, because every child deserves a quality early education, and every parent deserves the support that the Head Start model provides. I really wish that were the case. But our mission is to focus on, I talked earlier about poverty, helping families out of poverty. And so we serve what we call income eligible families. And so they are 100 to 110% of the federal poverty level. So for a family of four, that's not very much money. It's right around $24,000 a year. that they're surviving on to be eligible for our program. Now, our state has found value in early learning and specifically in the Head Start model. They've seen all those studies. They see the impact that it has had in communities, including Washington State. And so they have created a similar preschool and comprehensive development program called ECAP. ECAP stands for Early Childhood Education Assistance Program. And their eligibility is similar, except they have expanded it up to 130% of the federal poverty level. So to kind of put that into perspective for folks, a child in the public school system, K-12, who qualifies for free or reduced lunch, those families are at 185 to 200% of the federal poverty level. So we're serving the neediest of needy families in our community. So there's the income eligibility component, but there's also risk factors that we look at, that if a family has more risk factors, that child has more of a need. And so they get more points in our selection criteria, and that puts them, we put all families that apply on a wait list. And so depending on their number of points, the child with the highest need will be the one that gets the next opening. And so we are a program that is modeled after the school year. And so we have services starting September, and we've run through early June. And we get a lot of our enrollment happening, and we're fully enrolled in September, but we do have families move in and out of the community. And so we do have openings throughout the year. So we encourage families to apply and get on that waiting list, because their child could be 3 now, but it might be the middle of the year and they could have an opportunity. Mm-hmm. And they might come up on that list. And then we also encourage families to, and it's hard because we're private. And when we have hard things happening in our lives, sometimes we feel fear or shame, but we really encourage families to share what their concerns are, because it helps us qualify them. ECAP in particular has an extra component of helping families be eligible for children who have special needs. And so if they're receiving an individual education plan through their local school district, which our school districts do provide that for our preschool students, then they're automatically eligible for ECAP. So our state has seen that that's a need. A child has that special need, regardless of their income, they should have access to these additional services. So
Mindy, how many students, how many kids are we serving? I guess I shouldn't say that. How many families are we actually serving here in Cowlitz County?
Yep. So 524 children and their families and their extended family. When we think about some of these services having a ripple effect for that whole family unit. Throughout the county, we are located in Longview, Kelso, and Castle Rock. We do serve our other rural communities, but we don't have locations. We don't have centers in Kalama or Woodland. And so sometimes families that live in Kalama are traveling to Longview for work or school, and so they can be enrolled in one of our locations here.
So why is that? I mean, why don't we have it in Kalama or Woodland?
It's viability. So aren't as many families, firstly, and then aren't as many eligible families for us to be able to have a classroom, and we need to have a certain amount of kids in order to be able to pay a teacher and an assistant teacher and make the numbers work.
So how does the community, how do we as a community, how do we support a program like this? I mean, it clearly is a meaningful, beneficial program. How does the community support it?
Yeah, so we have, our community is amazing.
Yes,
so I told you earlier in my story that I I wasn't necessarily excited about having to come back to Cowlitz County, but when I learned about what's offered here and how positive and supportive our community members are and our organizations, it just kind of lit my fire. And there's so much happening in our community that is positive. And for Head Start, we have our primary funding source, but we rely on community support to get through hard times, to support families in ways that our funding doesn't support. So we have some wonderful businesses out there. We have a group that provides coats in the winter, and another group that knits hats and provides those to kids, so we can distribute those every year. And we seek additional grant funds and community support for things like upgrading our playgrounds and that sort of thing. So we were fortunate enough to right before and receive some federal funding for a new location in Kelso at Barnes that we opened this fall. But we're still doing some fund seeking and donation seeking for a playground in that building. So I think the other main thing that can happen is once you get educated and understand that there is this resource in the community, if you have a neighbor, a family member with a young child that you think might be eligible, maybe not, just they have a young child, refer them to Head Start. I mean, it's an easy process. We have an application that takes a couple of minutes online through the LCC website or a quick phone call, and we can let folks know if they're eligible.
If a family finds that they're not eligible, are there other places, are there other resources where families can go to I mean, what do you do with that in between group people?
That is a great question, because what happens is, I talked about the federal poverty level earlier. We're serving up to 100, 110, 130, depending on our state or federal funding. But we have a lot of families who fall in between that 110 and that 200% or more, that they can't afford to enroll their child and pay the tuition fees for a private preschool.
Right.
So what are those families doing? And that's a big gap in our community. And those families can sometimes be eligible for what's called Working Child Care Connections, which is a state subsidized child care grant. And that reduces the cost of child care for families, so that those parents can get to work, or school, however they qualify for those funds. But one of the things is that we have really a shortage of child care centers in our community. We have some wonderful child care providers, but we don't have a lot of folks providing infant and toddler care, because it's a lot more expensive. If you think about caring for babies,
It's a lot of work.
you need more people to do that, right? And people need to be paid. And so we have a shortage there. And so there isn't a lot of opportunity, and families put their education and their careers on pause in order to make it through that time. One of the things that we do, we've worked with Mission. I don't know that a lot of folks know that we have that going on. We have several organizations that support early learning in our community. And so we joined together a little over 10, 12 years ago to create the Cowlitz Early Learning Coalition. And that group has created a referral process to where we're trying to give a warm handoff to folks if they don't qualify for our program to another. Trying to get to know parents enough to where we can identify some needs and at least give them a next step. I think another thing that's really important to know and remember, and a listener might be in this position right now, but as a parent of young children, oftentimes you're a little more isolated from your community because you're focused on that caregiving, and it's that routine that you need to keep up for them. And our wonderful parents in our community do that, but they can become isolated, staying at home, not having a lot of contact. And so being able to get out into the community, and so a parent who's been isolated that comes to our door and isn't eligible, that's really tough to send them away.
Yeah.
And so we have some other, small opportunities in the community for families that we refer them to. Parents Place offers some wonderful parent groups where parents can get out and get connected with their children, being with them in that safe environment. Read and Grow is another opportunity. And of course, we have our local libraries, and I could go on. Again, our community has so much to offer. But as far as a preschool environment, there's not a working class preschool support out there if the family can't figure out how to pay for it on their own, if they're not eligible for us. So that's something that in my vision, I'd love to see differently in the future.
Is there any effort being made in that area? I mean, are there any groups or people who are sort of working on finding a solution to that?
Yes, there's a lot of interest in our community and statewide. Again, I talked a little bit about the Early Learning Coalition. And it's challenging in the state right now. The state of Washington, the child care rules just changed. And they've been increasingly, they're wanting quality to go up, and that's wonderful. But what happens sometimes is it kind of edges people out of being able to provide a service. And so helping community organizations and individuals who are interested in childcare and preschool know how to do that is something that I think there needs to be a lot more support in. And then the other thing that's happening, it's kind of an interesting issue that we're dealing with, and other state or federally funded programs are, is that the increase in minimum wage in our state is having a little bit of an unintended consequence for our eligibility.
Sure.
So we have seen families over the last year that, are making now $20 too much to be eligible for our program. And it's great that they've gotten this wage increase, except that it hasn't really changed life for them. And it certainly hasn't changed their risk factors, and that they still can't provide and pay for preschool or childcare on their own.
Right.
And so, I'd love to see that eligibility range change, and for some of our funders to really know and monitor that we have a good system in place, that we are continuing to serve the neediest of the needy families. But if we have a space and have that neediest of the needy family on our wait list, let us serve who's next in line. Wouldn't that be something?
Right. Yes. Yep. I like the idea. Waiver, or there's a percentage, or something that can go. They could include what they would normally pay for child care or something, and pay that piece. But it seems like there would be some effort in that direction. So a question real quick, are you seeing changes in the kids? I mean, kids are kids, that,
Mm-hmm.
but are you seeing changes in the children over the years, and maybe the type of things, that the learning level?
Yeah,
What
absolutely.
kind of changes are you seeing?
We see children come in across the spectrum. When we meet children and families, we do an initial screening to see if there are any developmental concerns and also what the strengths are. And then we assess children regularly regarding all their areas of development. So whether it be social emotional skills, their cognitive skills, their language development, their math skills, early literacy, across all of the learning domains. And we're looking to see where children come in, and then what activities we can provide to help bring them to that next level. And over the course of the year, we see all children grow. Some age groups more than others. It's interesting. We looked at our data last year, specifically in the social emotional learning area, and we see that 2-year-olds that we're serving have a huge amount of growth but we're only serving a small amount of 2-year-olds in our early Head Start program. So it's like, woo, this is an opportunity, right? And then we see 3 and 4-year-olds making quite a bit of growth as well, less so in math and literacy, which is kind of interesting. That's been a trend over the last couple of years. And we're really encouraging families to read at home with their young children.
Yep.
Read. If you can do anything, build in time for reading. It does so much for that young brain, beyond just learning the letters on the page. It's that interaction. It's that routine. I talked about that serve and return
Right.
interchange earlier. Kids learn so much from that story time experience with their parent. And so read to your children every day. But what we are seeing, and I alluded to this a little bit earlier, is that we're seeing children a little less connected, and more challenging behaviors. And our teachers would be like, yes, that's right, absolutely. And so we have a new challenge in classrooms. It's not a new challenge, but it's becoming more and more. We have more children. It might have been when I started in this work 12 years ago, we had 1, maybe 2 children in a classroom of 17 or 18 preschoolers that had some challenges being in a group, following routine, being able to manage that and experience. And now we're more 4 or 5 children in a group. And some of the behaviors can be, as simple as not being able to follow that routine and needing an adult's constant support and reminders to do that, to some, physical behaviors that are really challenging and sad. Yeah. But we have some supports in place. We have worked with infant mental health leaders in our community to figure out what can we do about this. And we found some funding to provide, kind of be that mirror back to the teacher and the parent to say, okay, when the child reacted this way, and then we come up, if we don't, we go back and we start again. Every child in our program is eligible for that program all year. During their time of service, there is no expulsion or expelling. I think that's something that might be out in the community, that preschoolers get expelled, not from our program. It's not always the best fit for every child, but we do everything we can to keep them in that environment and help them grow and be successful.
So what kind of work is done to you can't really assure, but to encourage, of course, that those behavioral that behavioral teaching and instruction continues on into the home, is reinforced there, or
Right.
to kind of, it's got to be a whole approach. It can't just be you're okay at school.
Right, for your 3.5 or your 6 hours. That's only a tiny part of the day.
Yes,
absolutely. So that goes back to this being a 2-generation approach program. And so we really encourage parents to volunteer in the classroom. So they're seeing those strategies that teachers are using and seeing the routine and how their child's responding to it. And we're required to have that parent involvement for our grant. We're required to have a 20% match of parent involvement, volunteering, and other in-kind for our grant every single year. And our parents really buy into that, and they get connected to that, and so they can do that in the classroom. So that's one way that they're learning. But then we also have, I talked about those comprehensive services. We also do home visiting. So every family that's involved in our program receives 2 home visits from their teacher and 3 from our family advocates. And if there's a child that's working on those social emotional skills, and most are, it's preschool after all, right?
Right, yep.
But if there's a particular area of need, We have a learning plan that's put in place and strategies that we're trying in the classroom, and being really articulate and honest and clear with parents whether or not that's an area that their child needs support in. And if we do that right from the get-go, then they can get working on that with us. You get that buy-in and start providing strategies and education to the parent as well, so that they can be that partner in helping move their child forward.
So talk a little bit more about the parents, because I know as a part of the Policy Council, which is made up primarily, for folks who don't know, made up primarily of parents of the children. And so for every class that's going on, there is a classroom representatives make up. I mean, there's a handful of us who are from the community that don't necessarily really do anything except be there to really kind of help support and be with and hang out with the parents. And they're an amazing group. But anyway, talk a little bit about the parent involvement and engagement with.
Right. So we have this great opportunity to connect with parents who are ready for some leadership development. And I think one of the reasons why Head Start has been around so long and been so successful is that parents who are involved in our program get it. Once they start seeing their child in that classroom environment, receiving the services that they get, it's like this light bulb goes off and they become passionate because they know it works and they want to be a part of it. And so there has been a huge grassroots effort of support for Head Start across the nation, in our state and in our community. When there are needs for Head Start, people respond because they have felt the positive impact of this program. And so part of that is because parents have always been involved in the governance of Head Start. And so governance, we mean, our policy council. Every center in our program, every classroom is represented, and our parents truly do govern. They review our funding applications. I have to have policy council approval to write a grant. They review the budget. They have an opportunity for not only having a leadership role as a classroom representative on that policy council to learn about and vote on program business and then take it back to their center, but a small group of those can be elected to what's our executive committee. And they really have a special leadership opportunity in that they learn how to run the board meeting. We have a president and a vice president, a treasurer, secretary, and then state representatives. And I'll say a little comes to and runs the monthly policy council meeting. It's a completely parent-run board. And then with them to make sure we're meeting our federal guidelines for the grant. But it's really the policy council that sees it through. And they take that leadership opportunity. They see it as a way to practice leadership skills, and we give them support and feedback in that process so that they're learning and growing and being positive throughout it. And it's an opportunity for them to build their resume and to we see self-efficacy, confidence grow and grow throughout that time.
Right. Yep.
Over the course of a year. And up to 5 years, a policy council member can stick with the board. And so it is a great opportunity. And it's one of the things that really, it fills my bucket in this work. I started off serving children and families and love that work. But as you move into more administrative tasks, you have to find a way to stay involved in the work. And policy council is my way of filling my bucket because I get to support those individuals and see that growth and development. And they are empowered because they have power. They really do.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. It's a great model. We cannot do business without their involvement. We have to have a quorum. We have a very formal process with bylaws, and they make it happen.
I found it fascinating. Having been on the council now for come in and watching them grow because never had any opportunity to serve in any capacity that was part of a council, a group, an organization.
And some of them wouldn't without the encouragement.
I'm sure that they wouldn't.
Yeah.
And watching those people grow and be a part, and the passion that you mentioned, the passion that they have for the program and for what it does for their children, it is quite amazing. So we've got just a couple of minutes left here, and I want to give, I guess, Mindy an opportunity just to sort of wrap up Head Start and ECAP, and I guess just by closing out by sharing what it means to you, and then the impact that you think that it has to the community.
What it means to me, Head Start and ECAP is that it really is something that works. I've been at it. I talked a little bit earlier about moving around a lot as a child, and that has created this drive in me for change. And the fact that I have been with this organization for 13 years says a lot, because I have this drive for growth and change, and things needing to be different. And in any other environment I could have been on, from one job to another, still learning and growing, but this program works, and it has kept me steady because I see it working, and that just has increased my commitment and my ability to stay and to continue to serve and help it grow and adjust to the needs of our community. And I would say that for children and families involved in this process, you would hear the same from them, that they become really passionate about the services that they receive. If they're really, engaged in the services, they get a lot out of it. And they see their children grow. We have a lot of parents say, I didn't have the opportunity for an older child to be involved, but my younger child is, and wow, do I see the difference. Their child involved in a preschool group environment and Head Start, ECAP, they're more ready for kindergarten. They're ready for that next step, and it helps make that smooth process into the rest of their learning experience.
So with just the last maybe 2 minutes, do you have in your years there, do you have a story? Do you have a favorite, that where you saw a child come in and you know that child today, you're a dozen years later?
Yeah. As far as kind of a fun anecdote, one of the things that preschool children do is they learn through play. And we still have that play environment that a lot of our community members might remember from their kindergarten experience, having a kitchen area to learn through their world, learn through play. And I had an interaction with a couple of children in the housekeeping area of a classroom several years ago, and kind of joined their play, and I said, "Oh, who are you?" And she says, "Oh, I'm the mommy." And I said, "Oh, well, who's this?" I said, "Is this daddy?" And she said, "No, that's the honey." And so you just knew in that child's home that mom called daddy honey.
Yep.
That was their family culture. And so young children just thrive off of their interactions, and that's a great example of that.
Yep. Well, I want to thank Mindy for being here, and this is who are watching this can hear, can see Head Start, ECAP, that quite honestly are paying huge, not only just our community, but across the nation. I mean, this is program, and the results have shown for decades now, that it is that it's a positive, well put together. So I want to thank Mindy. Thank you again for being here
Yeah, absolutely.
and sharing. This has been awesome. Smileson from Mark My Words, hosting live from Longview tonight. And I once again just want to invite you all to join me on Monday on KEDO 1499.1 FM for a talk on suicide prevention. And on Monday, we'll be talking about the impact. With that, I want to thank you all for joining us, and be kind to one another. And God bless you all. Good night.
So we'll have guests in here for the next 2 weeks. Next week is the lady that works.
Here we go.
All right.
Yes.